Hello, everyone. Happy sunny Wednesday. We are just loving that springtime that is just all around us. I love, waking up to a glorious sun-filled day. I'm not gonna lie. Well, if this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, I'm excited today because I already know you're in the zone. I almost like wanted to say, Lori, I'm like, we got to save the conversation for the actual webinar, but like you're hot and heavy, you're ready to go.
I always say that the busier my time is, the more I got going on, the more effective I am. Have you ever noticed that about yourself? It's like
Uh-huh.
when you got a little time to dally around, you're not as effective. When you're overwhelmed and got a lot to do, you're like, okay, let's get everything on target today. Let's get going. Okay, guys, let's get going. Welcome to the show. We're going to have another wonderful one as always. So let's get started here. As we begin, we're going to talk about, let's see, I think it's live now, the CFO series. We have April, and April's coming up with the full series starting again. Sadie's going to put that link in the chat right now as we speak. We got a full lineup for April. I'm letting you know everybody that's coming on board. We got a whole lot of different things happening. So Simon, who is an coach, he has health and wellness, and it's Emma's coach. Shout out to Emma. Thank you for introducing to Simon. He's been on the show before. He's going to come back on and talk about all these wonderful things about how to successfully run your company and manage your own being. And speaking of that, Tiara's coming back on when the mind clicks. She's been on some time ago, right about the fire time, and she's going to talk about leadership. It's going to be a great show. Everybody loved it when Tiara came on. Samara's got to come on and talk about HR stuff. Of course, we got to talk about AB5, that never goes away, and all the new HR laws, which there's a ton of them. And Sebastian hasn't been on for a while. I reached out to him and said, hey, Sebastian, come here, come on back on. And so we're going to talk about funding your company. I know that is a popular topic. Okay, so today for Lori's Corner, we're going to run through a whole lot of tax things. And Sadie is going to be putting a ton of links into the chat. This is kind of quick checklist, and she is also going to be putting my information into the chat on how to reach me because you may have questions on what I'm about to say. So here we go. So, hey friends, welcome back. It's Small Biz Talk. It's time for Lori's Corner. Let's today do a quick rundown on the standard forms and filing requirements for 3 of the most common legal structures I see with small businesses. So what are they? They're sole proprietorships, sole props as we call them, single member LLCs, and multi-member LLCs. So first, we're going to talk about single member LLCs, and I want you to think federal level, IRS. This is where a lot of people get confused. So a single member LLC is treated as a disregarded entity for federal income tax purposes. Okay, in another upcoming one, I'm going to tell you how it got figured out as a disregarded entity. I'll tell you the story on that. But for right now, we're going to just stick with a lot of forms. So for tax purposes, it's treated as a disregarded entity on the federal income tax unless the owner elects a corporate taxation via Form 8832. Just want to mention that in case anybody did. But for the most part, most of the people in the audience, if not all, are probably just a single member LLC treated as a disregarded entity. Now, the LLC is not a separate taxpayer. All the income, expenses, activity flow directly into the owner's personal tax return. It's a Schedule C that is inserted into your Form 1040 personal tax return. No separate federal tax return is required for the LLC itself. Remember, we're still single member LLCs. Now, the owner pays the self-employment tax, Social Security and Medicare on the net profit, just like a sole prop, Filing your own taxes as a single member LLC is basically the same as filing as a sole prop on a Schedule C. They're taxed the exact same way. And like both of them, you have to correctly calculate your self-employment tax. Okay, now let's go to the California Franchise Tax Board now. We're going to go to the California level. California treats LLCs differently from the IRS, okay? Completely different. Even though a single member LLC is a disregarded entity federally, California sees it as a separate entity for franchise tax and fee purposes. This is where Form 568, it's called Limited Liability Company Return of Income. And guys, a lot of people, I'm going to talk about this near the end, who are doing their own tax filing, they miss this form. What this is California's annual informational return for all LLCs. Doesn't matter, single member, multi-member, everybody has to do this form. In fact, how they define it is all that are doing business in California, organized in California, or registered with the Secretary of State. You need to do the form. Now, what does this form do? It reports the LLC's California source income. Even if it's at zero, you got to do this form, okay? It calculates any LLC fee based on income. And what it's doing is ensuring that the 800 annual tax is paid. So if it's a certain amount of revenue, it can be higher, but this is tied into your 800 annual tax fee, okay? It also handles other items like use tax or non-resident member taxes, if that's your case. Now, like I said, you must file Form 568 every year, even with zero income. I see people get caught on this one, and then they get a failure to file, okay? So zero income or no activity, you still must file it. Now, this is not the same as tax return. It is an extra California state requirement. Now, most of you know this because I drill it in, but I still see people who haven't paid this for like 5 years get caught. Huge penalties, guys. Most LLCs own a flat rate of 800 for they call it the privilege of doing business in California. That 800, if you have to pay it on your own, it's paid via Form FTB 3522. And when I say on your own, meaning your tax person didn't do it for you. They usually handle this for you. And once again, this is a separate form from any income-based LLC, which it only kicks in the higher income levels, okay? So now, single member LLC versus multi-member LLC. This is another snag. I'm seeing people get caught up. These are treated completely different with tax forms and deadlines. Single member LLCs, the disregarded federally, files a simpler version of the Form 568. Like I said, it has no Schedule Ks, for the most part. We're going to say, most of the time, but for the most part, no Schedule Ks. The due date for filing as a single member LLC is aligned with your personal 1040. It's April 15th, okay? Now, multi-member LLCs, they're treated different. They're treated as a partnership federally. So I'm saying more than one owner, okay? They file a more complete Form 568, including income allocation via Schedule K and K1s to each member. A lot more involved in that one. And their due date is March 15th. I've had multi-member LLCs saying to me, well, I'm getting ready to file my tax. I'm like, whoa, you missed your deadline, okay? So you need to know that March 15th is the deadline if there's more than one owner. So where are the common pitfalls? Like I said, many of you guys who were previously W-2 employees, you underestimate the complexity of these forms. You forget to calculate and pay the self-employment tax on the Schedule C. You skip filing Form 568 entirely. Many miss out on the 800 annual tax payment, which, like I said, leads to penalties, interest, and suspension of the LLC. So this is why I highly recommend that businesses seek a qualified tax preparer to do their own taxes, even if you filed your own taxes for years as a W-2. W-2s are very simple, slam dunk, put the numbers in, right? But simply put, once you have a company, it's just more complicated. Okay, that's my rant for today. Check out the links. Get in touch with me if anything I said doesn't make sense and you need clarification. So, to get to our show today, very excited to welcome back Dalia Fogenay. She is like our winner, always coming back to the show. She is an accountant dedicated to empowering businesses through effective financial management. As the founder of DF Accounting Services, she has been instrumental in helping numerous clients streamline their operations, improve their financial health, and grow their businesses. With a strong commitment to ethical practices and continuous improvement, Dalia is known for her ability to simplify complex financial concepts and tailor strategies to each client's unique needs. Outside of crunching numbers, she's an avid learner, always staying updated with the latest trends in the accounting industry, and a passionate mentor for fellow entrepreneurs. Dalia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
Ta-da! Friends, she's back. They love you on the show. They absolutely love you
Oh,
on the show. I don't even know how many don't know you, but we're going to start out for those that don't know you. So I'm going to do my short introduction of you on what I think of you, and then you'd give us your background. Delia, you're just extraordinary because you people can classify and say, okay, she does my books. It's so far beyond that. You are always stressing for them to understand their profitability, know their numbers, close to my heart, right? Then you're also talking to them about getting a good tax preparer, and you have many tax preparers who've been guests on the show that you work diligently with and create a cohesive experience between the bookkeeping and the tax preparation. For small businesses, this is unfounded and golden. They don't get that kind of connection and services in the small business world. And then you truly care. You touch them on a personal level, saying, hey, you got to understand, you can't keep taking on debt. You've got to get your accounting in place. So really, you're like that personal life coach and that connection all the way from the numbers, getting them correct on the bookkeeping and preparing for the tax and having good communication with the tax people, which is where we're going to get into today. So that is who you are to me. But
thank
tell
you.
everybody about your background. I love to stress that bookkeepers should have an accounting background. I love to stress that. So please introduce yourself to those who don't know you already.
Perfect. So I've been in the accounting industry over 12 years. I did work corporate before I went off and branched out to being in business. I've been in business 5 years now. So what was interesting is I was a little bit different than other accountants when I was working corporate. I was actually hired to be like a salary professional. So they would throw me in different industries to help the accounting department to develop it, to take over when someone was going off on maternity leave, or to hire the person who was going to be permanent in that accounting position. So I have a lot of background with aerospace, with just different, warehouse accounting, just different kind of backgrounds. So that's what made me more confident to go into business because I wasn't so niche down with one industry. I knew accounting in so many different levels. I was able to pick up different softwares very quickly when I was thrown into these businesses that really, really needed someone without training. So that's my background. And once I felt confident enough to go into business, I really took it, and it's been the best decision I ever done in my life.
Well, in 5 years, congratulations. Like I said, in addition to you helping businesses, you're a small business owner and a very successful one too, a role model in many different ways. As you were talking, and I think about this often, even in my own career path, I felt like I always been a little bit of a dabbler. My mind just doesn't like to focus on only one thing. So when I look at my career path, okay, I was over here in taxes, then a CFO, and then I'm over here in legal structures. And, it's always kind of been contained. But it really seems to me is when you look at let's just call them consultants. That's, you and I are in a way consulting, we're both
Right.
consulting. When you look at the individuals that are helping companies, the more diverse their background is, the more they dabbled throughout the career, the better they're going to be. when you get like even business owners, I find, I know I'm off on my tangent, I always am with you, especially, but when you find that business owners owned one business, they've suddenly on YouTube, like they're an expert to consult on bookkeeping and accounting and legal structure because they feel like they got it mastered. They don't realize they learned a small set of rules for only their world. So I feel like as much as I complain that people don't stay in their own lane, that you have tax people advising on legal structures when they don't understand it. You also have people who only have a narrow experience consulting outside of their expertise. And I think it's challenging because for the small companies, it's hard to detect the imposters who really don't know that knowledge. I don't know. Do you want to? I mean, that was just a tangent. Any thoughts you can add to my little tangent I just went on?
Yes, I always tell the business owners that when they are looking for like an accountant or a bookkeeper to like ask questions, like it's an interview like both ways, right? As the accountant, I want to ask you questions. I want to know if I'm familiar with your industry. I want to know if I'm comfortable taking you on as a client and vice versa. You as a client and looking for an accountant, a bookkeeper, a consultant, you want to make sure they have experience in your industry, right? And they'll be honest with you, hopefully, right? I know there's some accounting firms and bookkeepers that they say they only work with truck drivers, or I know some CPAs that say I only work with people in the music industry. So for me, when I have a potential client to send their way, I know it has to be someone who's in the entertainment industry, right? Actors or music artists. But I love that that CPA was honest from the
Yeah.
start. Dalia, I cannot help you with a client who is a psychologist or a lawyer. I don't really know too much about their tax laws, and tax expenses, things like that, right? So I think the number one thing people should do is definitely ask the person that you're considering to work with if they have experience in your field. I know a lot of clients, they get really excited when I start telling them like, oh yeah, I know your field. Like I know the type of expenses. I know that you have to have a trust account if you're a lawyer or certain things like that. So that's the number one thing I would tell people to ask their potential person they're going to be working with.
I agree. And this is a human thing, and I try to be conscious of it in my own self. Yeah. Have you ever noticed, like, if there's a topic that you aren't really familiar with, especially one that scares you, whether it's numbers or legal or anything in our lives personally, when we hire someone, we like give our power away and we don't ask the questions because we have them kind of up here. They know so much. I don't, and I find that in my days, I'm older, right? In my days, you could hire an expert and just go, oh, I got an expert. Thank God. I can just rely on them. I don't even have to know about it. I don't feel like you could do that anymore today. I feel like we are handing out our expert status like Cracker Jack boxes. Hey, I got a toy in the box. I'm an expert, right? Okay, that might be an old statement. Does anybody in the audience know about the toys in the Cracker Jack box? I just ate myself, right? But I think that today we cannot give our power away. Even if we don't know the topic, we have to still ask the questions, going back to what you're saying. But have you ever noticed that we tend to sometimes not ask the questions when we're intimidated by the topic?
Yes. And I think more than ever, it's interesting because we live in a generation of today that anyone can just slap the name expert on their title without you really having someone refer someone out to you. So that's one of the beautiful things about me and you is that a lot of people that come to us is because they've been referred out to us. We are known because people have worked with us and have talked about our experience. And that's why I'm really happy that I went this route, always going organic reach. But it's different compared to someone who knows an expert just by social media and then decides they want to work with them based on the content they provide. Not saying nothing wrong, but I'll definitely say like do your homework and try to figure out anyone you know that has worked with them just as individuals, like one-on-one. As okay, someone can sound amazing and give amazing tax advice, bookkeeping advice on social media, but it's a difference when you know people who are actually working with them behind the scenes, right? So I always say that to people.
Yeah, very true. And I feel for I'll just say the younger crowd, everybody younger than me, because there was a time in my life, in my 20s, when if somebody had a certain letters after their name, you were totally comfortable. They knew what they were talking about. You didn't have to go through the struggle of trying to find it. I mean, I've become like a DIY across the board because I've had so many bad experiences just even hiring people for construction projects that I've worked on, right? So it's interesting to me because it's a level of just even if somebody has a degree, doesn't mean they know as much as somebody who has field experience, if I can just call it field experience. So it's a combination of getting to know what was their book education, if it applies to the situation, but then also heavily lying on what is their experiences day in, day out. Like I tell people, when it comes to tax preparation, people say enrolled agents know more about the tax law than a CPA. I'm like, I'm new. You give me a CPA that's been around, they can run circles around me. All I did was pass some tests. Okay, they were hard, but I passed some tests. But what I'm saying is it's a combination of experience, a combination of what they've done, and it's you're doing due diligence to ask the questions. And I'm going to say one last thing on this before we leave this topic. And this is something I learned a long time ago. This is one of those weird tidbits, guys, this weird tidbits. So I remember, and it was like I was trying to get some information out of somebody, right? Trying to get some information out of somebody. And okay, at the time, I was always watching CNBC all the time. I don't anymore, but I was. That was back in the day. I was that, MBA watching CNBC. And I remember this guy was like interviewing somebody about stock, and he said these interesting words. Okay, this is going to sound so basic and plain and boring, but he said, walk me through the process.
I love
I
that.
caught on to those words. And do you
Mhm.
know, I started using them. I would ask somebody something, I go, walk me through the process. And what I noticed when you ask somebody, walk me through the process, it's totally different than tell me about your experiences or how do you work with a client. You get one answer when you say, walk me through the processes of how you engage with a client or work with a client. You get detailed. It's like their brain goes into this systematic way. You want to know the truth? Ask, walk me through the process. You got somebody you're dating, you want to know the truth. Walk me through the process of our relationship. No, I'm not giving dating advice here. Okay. I know I'm on a roll. But I think that if you use those words, you can get, without even knowing the topic, you can easily say that and you start to get more detail. So that's my weird little tidbit for today.
Yeah, I love that. I was gonna say, it's interesting because a lot of people, when believe it or not, when I team up with people, that's exactly what I ask them. Walk me through your process. If you want me to refer you tax clients, you want me to refer you financial advice clients, like people who are looking for financial services, walk me through your process. Or I'll throw questions as well. Like, how do you feel about a solo 401k? How do you feel about whole life insurance? And then depending on their answer, I know if they just got in the industry and they're just looking at a certain formula and just sticking to that. I need someone who can give everyone that I send their way different formulas because these are different individuals. And a lot of times they'll pass the test if they give me a different formula depending on the situation. So I do that with my referral partners, believe it or not. So,
Oh, I can see it works. On this last thing, I had a friend of mine ask me one time. She said she was talking with her daughter, her like 18, 19-year-old daughter, and she was trying to give her daughter, advice on dating and choosing, good boys for her, right? And she said, well, Lori, what would you tell her? Well, I didn't have any kids, but what I would do is I would use my old banking background. I'd say, okay, we're going to go on a date. Can I get 2-year interim financials and 3 years tax returns, please?
that's funny. That's so
Advice,
funny.
ask for at least 2 years tax returns before you go on that serious date. Okay, maybe the first drink you don't, but after you go on the serious date, get those tax returns. Okay, so I had to throw that in for tax season, right? So
Yes.
I am going to tell you two scenarios, Delia. You're going to love them. I always set up the ball and throw it to you. I'm going to tell you about two scenarios and let you run with it. Now, we were talking before the show, and I'm very clear that I always say when it comes to bookkeeping, when it comes to taxes and other things, we got to look at the ultimate goal. So people think the ultimate goal is the question, do I use QuickBooks? Do I use Excel? Do I use a bookkeeper? Do I use this? I'm saying all those are great questions, but what you have to focus on is accuracy. One thing the IRS is pretty clear, learned that in my testing, they don't care how you do your books. That they're not telling you. They're saying accuracy. So accuracy is the goal. Now, here's the other thing I want to point out. Unlike small companies, as a CFO, interim CFO for the bigger companies, I hated year-end closing and I hated tax time because it would be like major work and hustle and bustle within the accounting department because we had to pull up all the reports, do all of the reconciliation. I had to check and make sure all the receivables were really good receivables. I had actually to do some reviewed financials as well. That's an awful thing to have to go through. May I never have to go through that again. But there was this flurry of activity to just internally audit all of our financials before we sent it off to the tax person, before I sent it off to the investors or whoever it had to go to. You take a small business and you have the absolute opposite. They're getting ready for tax time is just go to the whatever they have and print the copy out and hand it to the tax person. Now, Delia, that is not good, but it could be maybe okay if the tax person audited, but then many of them, as you know, they take the numbers and they put it into the computer software and it goes straight to the IRS in the state of California. Those numbers had never been even looked at. And I seen somebody, and I'll give you a biggest example of it. I had somebody that was saying they had no income during COVID. And I'm looking at their tax return. I go, well, no, you had about 30,000. They go, no, we had no income. I'm like, your tax return says 30,000. What is this? They go, oh, it was a grant. They did it internally incorrect and they put it as income on their tax return. Yeah, total taxes paid on that amount. So that was just for the audience to get an idea. So what I like to do is have you unpack what I'm talking about and let's give basic information that everybody can know about on what they should be looking at and auditing at the minimum internally. So let's first start out by what is Lori even talking about with auditing and reconciliation? What does that mean? I'll give it to you, Dalia. Go wherever you want, but you got such good advice. Go for it.
Yes, I love that. So, for example, if you're working with a bookkeeper or you're doing it yourself, right? If you are doing your monthly bookkeeping, you're reconciling, you are keeping track of all your expenses, and you have a profit and loss statement, like Lori said, right? And you're like, okay, great. I have done what I'm supposed to do, categorize everything I need to. I'm keeping up with everything, but the auditing portion is very important. And I do the auditing portion with my clients as well, together with them and like on a Zoom call. So it's one thing that I'm reconciling, I'm categorizing on a monthly basis, I'm making sure everything's being done correctly, I'm matching it to the bank statement. But I always do an audit at the beginning. Like in February, I do all my audits in February, right before they're about to file taxes. Some who want to be ready before March, I do it in January. But what I do is, it's one thing for me to feel like certain items go to a certain category, but I want to get the approval of the business owner because sometimes business owners mess up. Sometimes a business owner will go to Target to buy office supplies, but sometimes they go to a Target to buy personal supplies and use their business credit card. This is when the auditing is very important. You want to make sure that everything that's on that profit and loss statement is business related. You want to be able to capture everything. I want to feel confident that you feel confident where I placed everything. And that's where audit comes in place. You want to review your profit and loss statement too, because maybe you categorize something in the wrong place. You don't want to send that profit and loss statement to your CPA, like Lori said. For example, someone gave them a grant, but they must have placed it under income on their profit and loss statement rather than donations or rather than grant. So the CPA wasn't able to pick that up because it was categorized under income. So in audit, it's more making sure that everything that is on here makes sense, is placed in the right place, and making sure that you're capturing everything. So sometimes what I notice is someone thought they entered an expense, right? But it was never entered. So making sure you're capturing everything because you don't want to be put in a situation where you're paying a lot on taxes neither because you forgot to capture actual expenses you had for the business. So I see that happening a lot where people are paying a lot of taxes because they're not capturing all their expenses and now they're ready to work with me because they're like, this doesn't make sense. I feel like I shouldn't pay a lot on taxes. Maybe I'm not doing my bookkeeping right. And as far as CPAs, to be honest, a lot of CPAs out there, they'll take a glance at your profit and loss statement and they'll probably like, if they feel like something's too high, they'll ask you about it, but they really won't dive into it. I noticed that from a lot of experiences, but a good CPA would tell you, there's no way this person has a virtual business and is spending $8,000 on a meal. They will call you up and confirm that. That's a really good CPA, but these are things you should look for sure. This
Absolutely. And you know what I always tell people is that the owners, and I'm going back to what you said, how you work with the owners on the Zoom call. And I think there's such an important aspect to this that I'd like to bring to the surface. The owners have an intuitive understanding, like they can look quickly at the marketing account, for example, and if it's 5,000 or 10 or 15, they know about what they spent, right? Where a bookkeeper may not know it, and also the tax person wouldn't at all unless it stands out. So this is why I think that the owners sometimes often believe, well, I don't understand the numbers, I'm not going to look at it, but
Yeah.
they miss out that they have an intuition, they have an understanding. And if they look at the profit and loss, and we're going to talk about the balance sheet in a second, but let's talk about the profit and loss. If they look at the profit and loss over a period of time, they start to notice, okay, yep, I spent that amount of marketing, okay, I spent that amount of marketing. I suggest that people on a minimum print out or get from their bookkeeper their profit and loss at the least and just look at the categories and the numbers because you can pick it up during the month. And I feel like too many business owners in the small business world, they ignore these reports always. They don't pay any attention to them. So can you elaborate more on the understanding from a small business to the numbers and how the bookkeeper can only pick up things that stand out really blatantly obvious, and it's a team. That's really where I'm going with it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's clients I meet up with on a monthly basis because they're at the scale where they're constantly making new transactions with new vendors. And then you have your standard, like for example, people who help with SEO. Those clients of mine, they're very straightforward. They got the same subscriptions, the same amount of money coming in. They don't want to meet with me on a monthly basis. But if they do happen to have a transaction that I'm not used to, I would definitely send them an email and verify what category it is. I'll give them an example of what I believe it is, but I need them to confirm for me. Now, for the clients that are constantly doing different transactions and one time they're using this vendor, then they change for another vendor for the reason of like the price is much lower. I am constantly meeting with them on a monthly basis and going over that small audit just for that month. It's very important to be in communication with them and ask them if they're comfortable where I feel like I want to place it. A lot of bookkeepers, what I notice working with bookkeepers, um, a lot of them, if they don't recognize it, they're just going to stick it under Ask My Accountant,
Oh,
uncategorized
I hate that.
expenses.
I hate that. Yes.
I'm not
I
that
hate that.
accountant, and I think that's why it's kind of hard for me to like build out a team because for me it's just no, you go do your research, you come to the client and you send an email to the client asking them if it belongs in any, give them like, hey, is it any of these categories? Don't just put everything uncategorized and then wait until you meet with them. For me, I'm constantly communicating with them because if they need, you never know, someone wants a line of credit, you want to be able to give them that financial statement without the bank looking at a huge uncategorized. So that's one thing
Oh,
that I want people to understand that certain bookkeepers, they're just gonna wait until they talk to you and kind of wait for you to kind of book a call with them. Where other bookkeepers, if you are working with a good one who really cares about your financials, they're gonna reach out to you immediately.
I am so glad that you brought up the Ask My Accountant and whatever it's called in all the different software or uncategorized. When I see that, that is a red flag. It's a lazy way of a bookkeeper just stuffing numbers in there. And I have seen that stay on the P&L year over year over year over year. I know. And I'm like, the ask should be like, let me put it in this minute and then let me make an appointment. It shouldn't stay there. And I see it month over month and growing. And that's a good indication. If you got that, if you got a bookkeeper and you see the Ask My Accountant on there or ask whatever it is, different software say different things, I think that is definitely a clue in. So now I'm going to go into another area that a lot of people who do their own bookkeeping, they don't realize that there's situations that require journal adjustments. They think that, and they're sold it from QuickBooks a lot. You just download the data, it mysteriously comes in, it's perfect. There's no manipulation of any data you need to do. And the two that come to mind is one is the Cal Savers. I know you brought that up and Zamara brought that up from an HR, but you brought that up from accounting if you have an employees, but also and I'm not a bookkeeper, I'm not in QuickBooks to this degree, but you'll know what I'm talking about and be able to explain it. There's something that goes on, and I've said this to you before, Dalia, and you've explained to me where I see people have they're double dipping on the credit card somehow. You probably know what I'm talking. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And I don't know what they're doing because I'm not working on that end, but I see it and they're double dipping or not making some journal entry. And so even though only some people have employees and deal with Cal Savers, almost every single small business is using the credit card. And I see they're messing up on that. So the main topic is the belief that you don't have to do journal entries, that they do need to be done, and the complexities in them. Wherever you want to go with that, Dalia.
So journal entries, I see a lot when people are working with like third-party softwares that say that connect with QuickBooks. So for example, if someone is invoicing outside of QuickBooks, which is very common, and I don't have no problem with that, or people are doing Klarna or those pay later softwares, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're paying that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this pay later Klarna, is it personal or is it business?
Right.
And then what exactly is it? I see a $200 charge every single month. I need to know for what exactly it is, right? Or things like someone's invoicing and the software that they're invoicing from transfers over to QuickBooks Online. And now you have this outstanding AR, accounts receivable
Okay.
that you're waiting
Yep.
for. And then now when I come in, I see the money come in. We have to make sure that we're matching it because if we're not matching that invoice to the deposit, it's going to show double entry. It's going to show two $450 payments. So
I
making
see.
sure that those journal entries that these third-party softwares are automatically transferring over to QuickBooks is being matched with a bank deposit. Even with payroll softwares, making sure that when Gusto, or I'm just using Gusto as a payroll software example, when Gusto transfers over the journal entry, making sure that you're just not like, okay, add, you're making sure that you match it to when those funds came out. So
Yep.
making sure that everything is being not double booked. Because I seen that where someone's payroll was showing duplicated because it was the journal entry and it was the actual expense going into the profit and loss statement. Making sure that journal entries are entered properly. So I see sometimes people would do a journal entry and hit it against the wrong account. You got to be, journal entries are very sensitive because it can mess up
Oh,
um,
yeah.
your profit and loss and your balance sheet. And the problem with journal entries, you can't reconcile them.
Right.
So I think a
Yeah.
lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
don't understand that.
Yeah, I always see them as catch 22. Journal entries are something that you have to do for certain situations. And then it was always something with my bigger clients, I would tell the controller, do not do any journal entries until I'm standing over here watching you because they can totally mess up everything. But at the same time, they have to be done. And I think, the moral of the story that I'm saying here is that when QuickBooks sells you on, you just download and it matches up magically, it doesn't take into account that the fact remains small businesses are friggin' complicated today. It was not this way when I was a small business owner and younger. And what I mean, we didn't have POS systems. We didn't have Cal Savers. We didn't have the kind of things we have now. So the smallest company has really complicated transactions. They could just be going and selling at the farmer's market, have a POS system, and have one of those, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, but those merchant cash advances. And suddenly they've got much more complicated transactions than they believe. So that's where these journal entries come in, guys, is that your transactions are more complicated than you think, and they don't talk about those. Okay, I have a question. I want to talk about merchant cash advances, and it's really a question I'm having too, Dalia, and we've talked about it a bit before, and it's the situation where the loan, it's not a loan technically, it's a cash advance. They can't be, first of all, they're way too high interest, and I don't suggest anybody taking that. That's a given, but that's not, I ramble on about that. I'm not rambling on about that part right now. Here's what I'm rambling on. Because, and it's a serious question that I don't know the answer to, because they take out the repayment before the money goes in the bank account, and the bank account is being synced with the accounting software, that loan payment and the total revenue. So if they had sales of $10 and they took out $2 in this merchant, they only get $8 into the bank account. Then they are matching the $8 into the QuickBooks software, and the CPA is reporting to the taxes $8 in total revenue, when it really was $10 in total revenue, $2 in a repayment of a loan, and that loan repayment should be on an expense, and the $10 should be on the revenue.
Yeah.
Most of the companies I see are not doing that correctly, and I don't know if it's gotten to a point, because if the something like a Venmo or something sends a 1099-K showing total revenue, it's not going to match with the tax return, and then they get an IRS underreporting revenue, right? And I can see that accounting wise, this is messed up terribly. I had somebody trying to get a consolidated loan, and they said, I'm paying all these fees. They didn't do the tax return right. And the bank said, there's no showing of fees. You're not paying any fees on the tax return because they had no fees. So you'll get what I'm talking about, Dalia. Am I seeing it as a problem, or are they just accepting that you do it this way? I can't imagine, because IRS is not changing their rules. So can you talk and maybe do a better job of even explaining to the audience what I'm talking about? Because I'm starting to see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a majority of people using these loans. That means a majority of this is reported wrong. How you like that one? There's a big one for you.
That's a really good one. That makes me really sad when someone's working with a bookkeeper who doesn't ask a lot of questions, is working with a CPA or a tax person that doesn't ask a lot of questions. But automatically, when I discover that someone has Square, PayPal, Stripe, those are one of the main questions that I'm asking from the beginning. Do you have any lines of credits? Do you have any loans? Who are your loans from? If they say Square or Stripe, or PayPal, I know the structure of it. Square and Stripe tends to take out from your profits, from your gross profits, because they collect the money on your behalf. So before they release it to you, they take their portion that you guys agreed on, and then they will deposit the rest to your bank account. Now, there's other platforms like PayPal who will give you a loan and then take out payments away from it automatically from your bank account. Those are much cleaner, but you have to really be able to discover what type of loan you have. Do you have a loan that is taking from your gross profit rather than taking a withdrawal from your bank account? Because that would change everything. That would definitely change everything. Now, the problem here that I notice is that people are underreporting gross income.
Yes.
And by that problem, there's a problem with that, because you underreport gross income, you're definitely going to show a huge negative balance on your profit and loss statement every year, every year, every year. Because on top of you underreporting your gross income, you're also writing off your expenses, where ideally you report your gross income, you report your merchant fees.
Yes.
Now you show on the balance sheet that you have a loan that you're making payments
Yep.
to. Obviously, that's not a write-off, but the interest aspect of it is a write-off. So I also noticed that even if you didn't have that many expenses, a lot of people are missing out on merchant fee expenses and interest paid expenses where
Yes.
they're paying more on taxes because they're not showing their girls. That's a big problem because if your CPA reaches out to you and says your profit and loss statement says you brought in 120,000, but you're only showing on your, sorry, on your K1, it's showing that K1 is usually like Square and Stripe, those so on your 1099 or whatever they send over to you, right? They're showing that you made 150. Why are you underreporting? Why are you
Yep.
showing less income? That means that your books are not fully done correctly. And a lot of times is what people don't forget is that when you're reconciling, you're reconciling against your bank. So of course you're gonna see reconcile on QuickBooks,
Right.
but you have to go out the way and create those journal entries, create that split on QuickBooks and say, this is my gross income, this is how much went towards merchant fees, this is how much went into interest and paid. Now you're left with the net profit. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't go out the way to do that. They just think that bookkeeping is just the sake of categorizing and reconciling. And it's much more deeper when you start adding these type of components, right? Because treat them Square, Stripe, and all these platforms, treat them like another bank to be,
Yeah. Yeah. You're dead on with that. And like I said, I'm seeing it every single day. And I think that so many of the small companies are using some of these services. I'm seeing a huge incorrect reporting. And I don't know. I mean, it's like the companies like Stripe and PayPal, they're not really helpful in even providing enough information to know the interest to take it off the bank account. Or take it off the journals. I think that eventually this is going to be a big blow up. I'm seeing it a little bit on the higher side of things where suddenly it's becoming recognized that it wasn't reported properly. But here's the bottom line: accepting or believing that your bank statement and QuickBooks, and that is the only relationship that gives you the proper numbers, is incorrect. You have to
that's
open up the Square reports. You got to open up these yearly reports. And you know what? I don't know on your end, but I see a lot of clients don't even think to send that to the bookkeeper. They're not sending it to the tax person. And if you don't have these documents and don't ask the questions, the reports aren't going to show you. You're going to think everything's fine. And
yeah,
that's the
I was gonna say so true. So for me, it's interesting because I find it so interesting when my client starts to, ah, you keep asking me for a PayPal statement. Oh, you keep asking me for the loan statement. Oh, you keep asking me for the statement of the vehicle. I don't know how much the statement will tell me how much you're paying towards interest, how much you're paying towards principal. Oh, I don't know how to access these reports. PayPal's giving me a hard time. Stripe is giving me a hard time. And I tell them, every report they have to offer matters a lot because we
yes,
have to make sure that our accounting software matches whatever they're claiming that they paid us out. So, so for me, I'm very big on send me over all your 1099s. Send me over your statements for the vehicle all year. I want every single month. I want to break it down to the T of how much you paid interest. Send me over your 941s, which is a payroll report for the whole
yep,
year. Send me your 940s, which is the quarterly one. I want to make sure that whatever they're claiming that they took out of your bank account matches whatever actually came out of the bank account. So I tell them it's a two-way street. I want to make sure they're not claiming that they paid you out more than you actually collected because Square or Stripe, they love to keep your money sometimes and they wait for you to reach out to them. They never ask you, they're not like me. Hey, by the way, there's $17,000. What do you want me to do? Where should I deposit it? They're not like that. They're gonna wait until you discover that $17,000 never got deposited into your account. So making sure that all these reports that they send you, all of them, that you are sending it to your bookkeeper and that you are sending it to your CPA. W-9s. W-9s are something that automatically, I don't care if you're going to pay that contractor. $300. You know you're not going to exceed the 600. By law, you need to have a W-9 for them because if you happen accidentally to pay them more than the 600 and they disappear on you, you never did compliance and you never collected their information, yet you want to write off the 600 that you paid them off, but yet you don't have no information on them, you can't 1099. So all these forms are so important. Even with me, when I start seeing people pay into contract labor, I'm asking for those W-9s. I need to put it into the system. Your CPA is going to request this W-9. Please send it over to me. So sometimes I think as the client, they feel like it's so much information someone's asking for. Does it really matter, these statements? Do these reports really matter to? Yes, it matters
Yes,
because I have to
they
make sure everything matches what they're claiming, right?
Yep. So right now, guys, you're probably going like, whoa. And I know that you're kind of hearing us. And of course, it's very complicated, so not following every word, but the huge takeaway, and I can't stress it enough, is there's so much more to this than you think. So the minute you think, I'm going to set up Square, I'm going to set up Stripe, I'm going to set up this, I looked at the technology, my advisor's telling me this will be really cool with my marketing and everything, you got to stop and you got to understand this is a financial and tax entry that you have to make. You have to stay up on these things. And, I tell you, I complain about it. I guess I can say that word. I complain about it with my SBDC advising that I get wore down with the number of people crying on the phone. I've said this to you before,
Yeah.
Dalia. Last week, 4 calls, massive crying, 4 calls. By the end of the week, I felt so drained because I feel for why were they crying? Bad legal letters, the no filing the 568, incorrectly reporting the revenue, not understanding the payroll, what they should have done. Most of them not paying the 800, not paying the, their company was all suspended. They were operating illegally without knowing it. And I know I preach on this all the time, but it's like the small businesses are being sold a pack of lies of simplicity that just simply doesn't exist. If I'm just going to use cash, I'm going to make soap, I'm going to go to the farmer's market, okay, fine. But that's not what we're dealing with anymore. Every single small company could have very little revenue and a lot of these mechanisms in place that are really complicated. So even if you listen to us talk and you go, well, you know what? When I'm doing my own bookkeeping, I don't look at those reports. I got those reports. My CPA doesn't ask me that. My bookkeeper doesn't ask me. Red flag. This is a red flag to be alerted.
Yeah.
Because what I tell people, people are always asking me, and I'm not commenting on chances of getting audited. It's interesting on our enrolled agent exam, they have this thing and it says that enrolled agents are forbidden, big word, forbidden to engage in what they call audit lottery. You can't say, well, the chances of you getting audited on that, which I think is funny, audit lottery. So I'm not doing audit lottery in what I'm about to say. I'm the EA, IRS, you see, I just made the fine note on it. But people ask me about getting audited. And Delia, you know what I find? When small companies get audited, it's because they failed to file a form or they filed the form incorrectly. I'm not seeing it like, oh, you got audited, they're questioning the amount you spent on marketing. No, it's the failure of filing forms and doing the standard regulations correctly. They get audited on that and then it opens up the whole can of worms. Do you find the same thing?
Yeah, it's so interesting because we always get that. Like, even other CPAs are like, have you experienced going through an audit and things like that? What's interesting about that is that I usually see people get notices from the IRS when they're not filing their taxes, they're not paying the 800 LLC fee, they're not structured correctly, they're not doing their statement of information, things like that. Oh, they haven't paid their nonprofit fees, little things like that. That's when they start getting notices, the
Yeah.
compliance aspect of it, or someone underreported, they received a 1099 and they didn't report that income. They have forgot they work with that company or they collected money from that company, or their payroll wasn't set up correctly, where they were paying people personal checks but never sending the money to EDD. So then when the person tried to file unemployment, there's no money in their I always call it the unemployment holding tank for them. There's no money for them to get unemployment money because apparently the company was paying them as a contractor instead of an employee. So I
Yeah.
seen and then next thing you know, I seen things like that happen, which is really scary. And then the commissioner of labor's office is now
Yeah.
knocking on their doors,
Yeah.
wants to
Oh,
wants financials, wants everything, wants timesheets. That's a scary place to be because they're gonna find you. They're gonna find any reason to find you. They're very aggressive. They're not really nice to talk to. It's really they treat you like you did a crime because these
yes.
labor labor is a big deal. They're very protected and employees very protected no matter what.
Oh, it is. And in fact, I had somebody that lately, oh my God, DIY setting up corporations. What in the world are they thinking? They didn't even know they had a stock book they needed to do. And I was like, your stock's no different than Wall Street stock. There's no like, oh, this is the small business stock. It doesn't have all the rules. It's the same rules, right? But I'll tell you on the payroll, a real story through the SBDC, and they came to me after all this happened. So I wasn't, I can't say exactly, but I'm a big proponent of, I'm actually just ADP and payroll on paychecks on payroll because I'm very big on making sure somebody's doing all the audits and checking and has an expert specifically in the state, right? But this company set up QuickBooks to do payroll, something I do not personally suggest at all. They weren't auditing the payroll records. They had like 10 employees and they collected the payroll taxes on all 10, but somehow missed the submission to the government on 2. They didn't catch it. It was a small amount, small paychecks. They didn't catch it. They didn't do year end, quarterly. They didn't, have any of that in place. And according to rulings, if you have where you are not properly doing payroll taxes, it is fraud. And anyone who touches it is included in the fraud. And
Right.
so the owner and his 2 daughters, one of them just handed out the paychecks every week, have
Oh,
liens on their houses and fraud because of that. That's why I'm saying this. When you said they're aggressive, I've been through the AB5 recently. I've been through a lot of this, and I'm seeing a lot of small companies get in really serious legal, tax, and accounting just because of buying into this simplicity belief that isn't true. So I'm not trying to, well, no, I am trying to scare people a little bit. I think I kind of am. I think I want people to wake up to the real, the real world here. So as we get near the end, did I leave anything out? I was all over the place. Is anything you wanted to add as far as preparing for taxes, doing audits, checking? Maybe we should talk about the balance sheet for a couple more minutes left as well.
yeah. I do want to say something quickly when you're saying like you're not trying to scare them, but yet you are. You know what? I want to be honest with everyone. Just like if you needed legal advice, the same thing with your business. Reach out to a consultant before you make any decision, before you begin to hire someone, before you begin to like scale your business, before you plan on taking out a loan or taking out loans from Stripe or Square. Reach out
Or
to a
setting up your
consultant.
legal structure,
Setting up your
Penny.
legal
Yeah,
structure because it's so important for you to reach out to a consultant. Like that 1 hour fee will be so worth it because it will save you so much headaches rather than you assuming I need to automatically be an S corp. I need
yeah,
to automatically structure it this way. Make sure even people who are planning on going into partnerships, I love it. It's beautiful. But reach out to a consultant because that consultant's going to tell you the good and the bad and everything to look forward to. They're going to explain to you if you're going into a partnership, please keep in mind that if one of you guys want to walk away, who's going to keep the business? How is this going to be done? Are you going to buy him out? These are things no one ever considers to think about before even starting these businesses. So we are trying to scare you to the point, not scare you to like where you run away from business, but to scare you to make this like not make decisions on your own. Talk to a professional about this of the right way to go about all of these things. Like when it comes to my clients call me to even buy a vehicle, to even buy a business vehicle. They call me about everything because it will save you thousands of dollars, like just
yeah.
reaching out to someone. So I just want to leave that there. Now, as far as the balance sheet, I think a lot of people try to ignore the balance sheet, but the balance sheet is
Yeah.
very important
Yeah.
because if you are now getting to the point where you need lines of credit, they're going to request that balance sheet. And that balance sheet cannot be showing crazy numbers. Like you have 10 loans and all loans look like they got $100,000 balance on it. You have to make sure that when you're making payments to it, the principal is going down, the interest is hitting the profit and loss statement. Because a lot of times I've seen people's balance sheet where they categorize the whole income into, I mean, the whole payment into the balance
Yeah.
sheet.
Yeah.
And then now it looks like that balance sheet is negative. And I'm just like, that
Yeah.
looks a little, or your owner distribution looks so funky. Like it looks like you paid
Oh,
yourself out 300,000 where in reality you didn't. So just making sure that all of that is clean and the balance sheet reflects your bank account dollar amount that is there currently for that month. So if your bank account, let's say your bank account has 3,000, but your balance sheet says that it only has negative 2,000, that's a scary place to be because then that means something is not right.
yeah, your balance sheet is a good way to check to see if you definitely have some errors. And when I look at the balance sheet on the clients, especially those, many of them who have bookkeepers, it's a nightmare. Owner's equity negative. How do you start a company with negative dollars? It's
Yeah.
crazy. So I know we're at 11, but I just want to give you a big couple seconds here, Dahlia. I know that Sadie has put your information in, but talk about for a new client, do you talk with them? Do you meet with them a little bit? If they got a question, if they want to get to know you, just walk us through your processes.
Yes. So when someone wants to talk to me, they usually reach out to me by my website and then I respond to them via emails and then we set an appointment. On that appointment, we're just discussing about their business and what kind of line of work they do. I talk to them about how I conduct business. So a lot of times people are looking for people just to categorize, not to really send them too much messages. Or they're looking for someone who they pay them like an hourly fee or whatnot. So I kind of walk them through my structure and letting them know why I charge what I charge because I offer like Zoom calls, I offer like profit and loss reviews, financial summaries, letting them know their profit and margin. So I do a little bit more than what other bookkeepers do. I let them know how much money they brought in, how much they spend. And so I tell them, is that a 60/40? Is that a 50/50? Like I'm having those conversations with them, letting them know and constantly like motivating them. Okay, next month, do you want to be able to keep 80 and spend 20%? So that's the difference with me and a lot of more people. I'm looking for people that want to scale their businesses and eventually want to branch out to having CFO work. So I'm that bookkeeper. I'm at that position in my life right now where I want to work with people who really are ready for bookkeeping and want to use it long term. And then I also educate a lot of people. So a lot of times people decide not to work with me because they're not ready, but they leave that conversation feeling like you have like set me up because a lot of times once I get you on the phone, I'm gonna make sure I do like charity work as well and educate you, making sure that you don't make these mistakes because a lot of times people don't even know the structure they are. So I'm
Oh,
like,
I know that.
I
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
explain to them like, hey, you're an S corp. That means you need to run payroll for yourself. And they're like, what? Like, so that's what you can expect from me on a call. I always tell everyone it's worth giving me a call because I can just lead you to the right direction. And then eventually when you are ready to work with me, you know what I have to offer for you. And you know what
And
to
the other thing,
expect.
yeah, the other thing I'd like to add that I love that you've been doing lately is you've been also just structuring it with a based on time for a check-in. Maybe somebody just wants you to check the QuickBooks or answer a few questions. So that's what I love too, is you've been customizing your services so somebody can buy a certain amount of time to just kind of go over something with you. So in
Yep.
that, I know some of you guys had specific questions about categorization and stuff. Reach out to Dahlia. She can charge you a certain amount of time just to answer some questions in a consultative manner as well. So if
Yes.
you got some questions that are very specific to your situation, you can say, Dahlia, I want to buy a certain period of time and just pay her as a consultant. And I wanted to add that part of your services
Thank
as well. So thank you so much for always coming on. I know, guys, this was an intense conversation, but it really is important. So if you're overwhelmed by it and you're thinking there may be more than you're doing, that's good. Because don't call me be crying. Call us and let us help you. Don't call us after and have tears. Tears are just breaking my heart. Sadie, are you overwhelmed now?
I mean, like I knew it was gonna be an intense session when we were like in the pre like meetup where like when you guys get together, I mean, it's like numbers heaven or like the levers logistics of it all where I'm like, it's a rabbit hole. You guys go down a rabbit hole where I'm like, oh, I want more. Let's hear more.
I know, absolutely. So, guys, thank you for being here. We're going to lighten the load next week with coaching and a bunch of fun things like that. But, like I said, take everything today and do an audit internally and keep your affairs safe and in order. It's just really a good thing. So, thank you to everybody who stayed with this intense conversation today. And thank you to our frequent flyers that are here every single week. And if you are new to the show, join us next week for Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Thanks again, Dalia. See you next week, Sadie. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. All righty, guys. If you guys are frequent flyers, you know the drill. I'm going to hang out a little bit afterwards just to make sure that you guys get all the links, Dalia's information. I am going to be putting in Lori's April webinars in there. I just didn't want to take up too much room while the chat was going, but it's all in there. Let me know if there's something that you guys want in addition to the links that are in the URL. And if you're not a client of the SBDC, let me put that info in for you as well, okay? Because I don't know if you heard at the top of the session, these are one-on-one services that are available to you at no cost. These are your tax dollars at work. So if you are not yet a client of the SBDC, please come, become one because it's imagine getting a Lori as a one-on-one business advisor. So like basically the idea of the SBDC is we are our whole entire network. So we have different types of subject matter experts. So as you can see, Lori is our CFO kind of skills, but if you need like marketing, what about, AI, how to use AI for your business. What about permits, right? Like maybe you're going to get a brick and mortar store. So, maybe you need to look at lease requirements. We have subject matter experts in that field as well. So not just because you get one business advisor does not mean that you're not going to be connected to all the business advisors that we have on network. So please go ahead, join, connect. And on that note, I am going to put myself on mute so you guys can click away. But let me know if you need anything. Have a wonderful day.